right, well, that sounded halfway okay. I'll give you guys a C minus. In our home with 3 kids who are constantly battling with grades, I give them everything. Everything's a grade. It's like, how's your room look? Oh, it looks good, Dad. I'm like, I give it a B. B, maybe if I'm being generous, give it another round. So first of all, congratulations. You guys showed up on time for our first Sunday 10 a.m. service. So congratulations. Round of applause to you guys. I'm sure we'll see some more stragglers coming in about 10 minutes, thinking they're on time, and yet they're going to be a half hour late. So appreciate you guys being here on time. Excited for this new series. This new series that we're starting today will go through the month of July, and we'll also go through the month of August. And so we're excited to kick off this new series called The Thing Behind the Thing. And as you first listen to that, you're thinking like, what in the world is this thing all about? So what is this thing all about? This thing is about you. This thing is about ultimately how and where and when you make your decisions. You make your choices. At the end of the day, all of us have a driving force that leads us to our decision making. All of us have a driving force that leads us to the way we think, what we believe, our opinions, how we view relationships, what our beliefs are about God, what our beliefs are about politics, what our beliefs are about education system and finances, and everything that you do a part of life has a driving force, has a driving thought process. And at the end of the day, it's probably important that you understand and learn, what is it? What is it that drives your decision process? What is it that drives your decision making? And are you normally happy with all of your decisions? Are you normally happy with every decision you make? And so we're going to get into that, because at the end of the day, as we get into God's word, we can see that God has an intention for what our decisions should look like, but yet we find ourselves making decisions that ultimately don't align with God's intentions. And then somehow, some way, in our brains and our hearts, we justify them in certain ways, and then we just move on as if we didn't make those decisions. And so we're going to get into that. And one of the things that I just want to share with you is, we naturally have a tendency to want to know and want to learn. But as we get older, that tendency becomes less and less. I remember when my son was like 4 or 5 years old, Caleb was this big, and I had my computer open at home, and I'm behind my computer, and I'm like, typing away, or I'm reading, and then he'll come up and be like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, buddy, I'm getting some work done. He's like, what is that? And I'm like, that's called an email. And then, I'll get rid of the email, and I pop up the next document. Dad, what is that? And I'm like, that's called a Word document. And then, I start typing on the keyboard, and he's like, well, what is that? And I'm like, that's called a keyboard. This is how I communicate what I want. And he just kept asking questions and asking questions. And then finally, after question number 100, I just closed the laptop. I said, fine, okay, let's go do something else. Obviously, you don't want to, work for me, and you don't want to let me work, so we'll just go do something else. But what I didn't realize is this: kids are hungry for knowledge. As a child, it is a natural reaction to ask questions. And research shows that a child will actually ask about 250 questions a day. And so early childhood, children have a hunger for knowledge. They have a hunger for curiosity of what is this, and how does it work, and why are you doing this, and why would you spend time with this, and what is the purpose of this, and they just have questions and questions and questions, because they are hungering to know and hungering to learn. And then as you get older, as you move from early childhood to teenagers, those questions become a lot less. And then as you get out of the teenage years into young adults, it's a lot less questions. And then by the time you get to become an adult, your questions go down from 250 a day to about 20 questions a day, if you're an adult who still values learning. And so you can see that there's a drastic change from 250 from early childhood to 20 as an adult. And at the end of the day, there's a process that happens throughout that childhood into adolescence that causes us to want to learn less. And then we develop habits, and we develop innate behaviors, whether we know it or not. And the next thing we know, we're making decisions and wondering, why did I just do that? That's not at all what I had intended to do. How did I just make that choice? And so there's a quote that I want you to understand is this: whether subconscious or conscious, we all want to know what's driving our most impulsive thoughts, feelings, and actions. So whether we do this on purpose or whether we do this without even knowing, we all want to know what's driving our most impulsive thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. What is the driving force behind them? And there's a few that I want to read to you today. And so as we dig into emotions and feelings and thoughts and decision-making and behaviors, what drives these things? So why do I always feel the urge to buy things I don't want when I'm stressed? Why do I always feel the urge to buy things I don't need when I'm stressed? Anyone? Anyone out there? Or is this just me? Because I feel like I connect most with my female friends when I'm under stress. When I'm under stress, I love to go buy a new hat. I love to go buy new shoes. Sometimes I've even gone to the extent of buying a car, and so my wife just let it slide as a midlife crisis. And so, but somehow, some way, there's a driving force to some of us, not all of us. This is, to some group of people like myself, that when we're under stress, we have some sort of release of stress when we occupy our mind into purchasing something. So that's one example. Here's another example. What drives me to check my phone constantly, even during important meetings? Anyone? Anyone out there suffer this pain that I do? I don't know what it is, right? I don't know why I'm constantly checking my phone. And so for some reason, I can be very involved in a conversation, and I would be enjoying the conversation. And while I'm involved in the conversation and enjoying my conversation, I catch myself doing this. And I'm just like, wait, why am I doing this? I'm enjoying the person that I'm spending time with. I'm enjoying the conversation. There's no complaints. Why am I constantly checking my phone? Well, if you're anything like me, you're wondering who else is reaching out to you. You're wondering what else is going on in the midst of what you're currently doing. And yet you're hoping that you don't miss an important email or an important text that's later going to cause a repercussion that you might not enjoy. And so there's some sort of driving need inside of some of us that causes us to constantly be checking to see what's happening in the outside world while I'm in this world right here. So that's just another example. It may not be for everybody, but some of you may be like me in this one. Here's another one. What leads me to overcommit to activities and responsibilities I can't handle? Anyone out there? Overcommit? Anyone out there schedule look kind of full from the time that you wake up to the time that you go to bed? Or is that just me? Am I the only one who, when I see blank space in my calendar, I immediately think, how could I fill that space? Who can I reach out to? Who is available during this small 48-minute window in my day? I mean, God forbid I take a breather and relax and just enjoy 48 minutes to myself, right? I mean, who would do such a thing? There's 48 minutes where we can fill it with something to do. Right? So maybe just me, but who knows? Maybe there's another person out there, maybe online, that connects with that pain of mine. All right, here's the next one. Let's see here. Who falls under this category? Why do I feel a sudden urge to leave social gatherings or avoid them altogether? Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not me. Okay, this is not me. I don't feel the sudden urge to leave a social gathering, but I have heard there are some people out there that don't enjoy being around other people. I have heard through the grapevine that there are some people out there that would rather drift away into their home, close the door, listen to some music, put on a show, pull out a glass of wine, and just enjoy peace and quiet. I've never experienced this, but I have heard there's people out there that do this. Okay, so why do I feel that sudden urge to leave social gatherings and avoid them altogether, right? Let's see, what's another one? Can someone connect with this one? Why do I feel the need to constantly seek approval from peers? What is it inside of me that cares about what others think? Why? Why do I care? Why do I care if I feel accepted? If I feel wanted, if I feel included? Why would I care about that? Is there anyone that can relate to that one? One more. I'm going to give you one more. What Why do I feel the need to seek validation from others through social media? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to this one, to be honest with you, because there is a large group of teenagers sitting in front of me wearing a black shirt that feel the need, my poor son will never sit in the front row again, that feel the need to be accepted through social media, that feel the need to be seen and heard through social media. Last night we're at an event, which is a great event. Where the boys and I are watching a boxing matches down at the Honda Center, and there were some cool fights happening. It was in the ring, and we got good seats, and we're enjoying some entertaining time. And I look over, and I just see this the entire time. See this and post down. I see this and post down, and I'm just like, dude, put it away. We're here watching this. You're over there recording it. These guys are going to post it on social media later. It's like, yeah, Dad, but I get to be the one to post it. And I get to be the one to show what it is we're doing and what we're watching. And I'm like, and I don't care. Watch the fight. And so there's some sort of need. There's some sort of need to show the world what we're experiencing and what we're doing. And there's a huge audience for that. It may not be me, but there is a huge audience for it. So if you're experiencing any of this, not maybe all of them, but if you're experiencing one or two or three of these, you're not alone. You're not alone in the mystery of why do I do these things. You're not alone in being the only person that has experienced any of these emotions or feelings. Actually, there was a person in the Bible who was used drastically by God. Actually, he wrote most of the books in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul, before he became the Apostle Paul, his name was Saul. And in those times, it was Jewish customs to have more than one name, to have a Jewish name, to have a Greek name, to have a Hebrew name. So it was a Jewish custom to have multiple names. When he had a moment where God got a hold of his life and transformed his heart, his life was changed, his name was changed, his mission of existing was changed. And he became a person who now was committed to letting others know about Jesus Christ. Before that, he was on a mission to letting people be persecuted and murdered for even thinking about Jesus Christ. So did he go through a major life transformation? Absolutely. On one end, when he was Saul, he was killing and he was murdering and persecuting people who believed in Jesus. Then he had an encounter with Christ. His life was turned around. He became Paul and started being committed to letting people know who Jesus was and how his life was transformed. So there was a major transformation here. And you would think someone who gave their life to listening to God's voice and preaching God's word and going from town to town and country to country to share the good news about Jesus, you would think that they would have not had any issues with who they were. You would think that they would have clarity on their identity and clarity and security in their relationship with God. You would think that there'd be no confusion in their hearts and in their minds. But yet there's a portion in Scripture in Romans chapter 7 where Paul shares some confusing thoughts, where he finds himself making decisions and he's wondering why. Why am I making these choices that I don't want to make? Why am I making these decisions that I know that are not right? I know what is right, but yet I find myself making poor choices. How is this happening to me? And so Romans chapter 7, verse 15 through 20, it says this. In fact, I don't understand why I act the way I do. So Paul's saying, listen, I'm following closely to Christ, and I don't even understand why I do some of the things I do. He says, I don't know why I know. It says, I don't know. I don't do what I know is right. I do the things I hate. Although I don't do what I know is right, I agree that the law is good. So I am not the one doing these evil things. The sin that lives in me is what does them. So here, before I go any further, is Paul is showing his innermost vulnerable thoughts right now. He is letting us into his deep thoughts and minds and brokenness. And he's sharing with us on how he finds himself in confusing situations. He's saying, I know what is right, but I find myself making poor choices, even though I agree with what is right. And even though I don't agree with the choices that I'm making, I still find myself making these poor choices. It says, verse 18 says, I know that my selfish desire won't let me do anything that is good. Even when I want to do right, I cannot. Instead of doing what I know is right, I do wrong. And so if I don't do what I know is right, I am no longer the one doing these evil things. The sin that lives in me is what does them. So Paul is really honestly disclosing some inner challenges, some inner struggles, some inner wrestling that's happening inside of his head and his heart. And he's really honestly struggling with trying to understand his own behaviors, his own decision making, the choices that no one's asking him to make. He's making these decisions all on his own, and he finds himself regretting a lot of the things that he's doing. And so what I can see here in this story with Paul is that he's realizing there's something deep within him that's driving his decision making. There's something deep within him that's driving his process of behavior and choices. And the circumstances around him do affect it, but the reality is it's coming from within him. And the reality is the same for you. Circumstances around you may affect your decision making. Economics, career, finances, relationships. Circumstances around you may affect your decision making, but the reality is most of your decision making comes from a decision process inside of you on how you react to what's happening around you. Emma Young, a new scientist from a magazine, she said this. A New Scientist magazine estimates that 95% of our lives are lived unconsciously. 95% of our lives, when we arrive to adulthood and we stop asking questions, we move into a pattern and a routine, and we start to live off of behaviors and choices from the past. Whether we agree with those behaviors and choices, because we're so accustomed to them, we just move on with our behaviors and choices. And so what she's saying is a lot of us don't ever stop and think about, how did I arrive here? Why am I making these choices? Why are the behaviors coming out of me, behaviors that I don't even necessarily agree with? And the answer to that is there's a primal question inside of you. There's a primal question inside of you that you are looking to get answered. And when that primal question inside of you gets answered with a yes, you feel the most joy, you feel the most purpose, you feel the most fulfillment, you feel the most happy, life is great. But when that primal question in you gets answered with a no or even a maybe, you start to panic, you start to feel the most emotion and unhealthiness, and that's where a lot of our decision making comes that we don't want to make. That's where a lot of the behaviors come out of that we would wish we didn't do. It's where the unhealthiness comes from. And so there's a primal question inside of us. Now, all of us may have a different primal question, but we all have a primal question. And there's nothing wrong with having a primal question. The wrong comes in not knowing it and not knowing how to manage it and not knowing how to lead it so that you can make healthy decisions in your relationship with God and your relationship with others through that process. So what is a primal question? I'm glad you asked, because here's the answer. One of a set of core questions that subconsciously drive your choices, actions, and triggers. It's the thing behind the thing. It's what drives everything. It's what drives your heart. It's what drives your mind. It's what drives your emotions. It's what drives your triggers. It's the thing behind your thing. There's 4 major points that the primal question answers in your emotional life and your relationships. One, relationship with your emotions, and this is everything that's connected to your feelings and your triggers. The other major one that it affects in your relationships is your relationship with others. And this primal question inside of you will cause you to spend an enormous amount of energy trying to get everyone around you to answer that primal question inside of you with a yes. The other relationship it affects is your relationship with choices. And this is where when the primal question inside of you, when it's answered with a yes, you're making the best choices. And when it's answered with a no or maybe, you're making the choices you wish you didn't make. And the last part of this primal question is your relationships with yourself. And this is when you can be your greatest cheerleader or your greatest critic. This is when you can fill your thoughts and your heads and your words with how great you're doing, or we can fill your thoughts and your heads and your emotions with how terrible you are doing. And this primal question is deep within us. It is deep within us, and it's the force that constantly is moving our behaviors and our thought process. And there's an author, T.F. Hodges, and he states this. He says, what surrounds us is what is within us. What surrounds us is what is within us. Just like many other things in our life. What's around you, what you grew up in, your upbringing, your core relationships with your adults in your life, siblings, friends, your experiences through school, elementary, junior high, high school, college, marriages, other business relationships, all of this affects your primal question. All of this affects how you view life and how you drive this. And so there's a story that I want to read to you that hopefully you'll get an understanding for on how this inner decision that's happening inside of us can affect your decision making from a healthy way or unhealthy way. And the story is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. And this is the story of Moses. And if you know the story of Moses, you know that during this time there was a Pharaoh who was ruling the country. And the Pharaoh was in such fear of losing his position and power that he decided that he was going to do everything possible to hold on to his position and power, even if it meant killing other people. And so during this time, the Hebrew nation was growing. And so because they were growing, that he became fearful of losing his position and power, because if they grew in numbers, that means that they would overpower his nation. So he decided by controlling the situation, he was going to stay in position and power by having all boys murdered who were Hebrew babies. And so this is how he was going to control the situation. He was going to have every boy that was a Hebrew baby murdered so that he can stay in position and power. Somehow, some way, he arrived to this being a good idea. However he got there, there was a primal question inside of him. That he was afraid of losing control. And he was willing to do anything to keep it. And so, as you may or may not know, Moses, when he was born during this time where all Hebrew babies were being murdered. And here's how the story goes. A man from the Levi tribe married a woman from the same tribe, and she later had a baby boy. He was a beautiful child. His name was Moses. Nobody? Really? Are you with me? He was a beautiful child with long, luscious locks. And she kept him inside for 3 months. But when she could no longer keep him hidden, she made a basket out of reeds and covered it with a tar. She put him inside the basket and placed it in the tall grass along the edge of the Nile River. The baby's older sister stood off at a distance to see what would happen to him. About that time, one of the king's daughters came down to take a bath in the river. While her servant woman walked alongside the riverbank, she saw the basket in the tall grass and sent one of them to pull it out of the water. When the king's daughter opened the basket, she saw a baby crying and felt sorry for him. She said, "This must be one of the Hebrew babies." As you know, they were all being murdered, so she was obviously realizing that this baby was trying to be saved. It says, at once the baby's older sister came up and asked, "Do you want me to go get a Hebrew woman to take care of the baby boy for you?" "Yes," the king's daughter answered. So the little girl brought the baby's mother and the king's daughter and told her, "Take care of this child and I will pay you." The baby's mother carried him home and took care of him. And when he was old enough, she took him to the king's daughter who adopted him. She named him Moses because she said, "I pulled him out of the water." Now, before I go any further, let me just help you understand what's happening here. Moses' mother wanted to save him from being murdered. She takes a risk, puts him inside of a basket, sends him down the river, hoping that someone in Pharaoh's kingdom would find him and take care of him. So sure enough, Pharaoh's daughter finds him, And the little girl was Moses' sister, who came out and said, "Hey, it's a Hebrew boy. Do you want me to go find a Hebrew mother to take care of him?" And the lady said, "Of course, please." And so he goes and finds Moses' mother to take care of him and nurse him until he was old enough to be handed back to Pharaoh's daughter. So he gets adopted in Pharaoh's kingdom by Pharaoh's daughter around Egyptians who are not like him. They don't look like him. They don't talk like him. They're a different culture. They're a different nation. Moses definitely looks like a Hebrew. He definitely looks like part of a nation that was being enslaved, that was being brutally beaten, that was being mistreated. So Moses is being raised in a household that's nothing like him. And then there's a point in this story that Moses finds some injustice happening. Thank you. Let's give Debbie a round of applause for saving Moses over here. Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 through 15 says, "After Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were own people were hard at work, and saw an Egyptian beating one of them. Moses looked around to see if anyone was watching. Then he killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. When Moses went out to the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting. So he went to the man who had started the fight and asked, 'Why are you beating up one of your own people?' The man answered, 'Who put you in charge of us and made you our judge? Are you planning to kill me just like you killed that Egyptian?' This frightened Moses because he was sure that people must have found out what had happened. When the king heard that Moses had done this, he wanted to kill him. But Moses escaped and went to the land of Midian." So as you see in this story, Moses knew that he did not fit in. Moses knew that the Hebrew people were people that looked like him, that talked like him. And when they were being mistreated, he reacted and murdered the person that was mistreating him. Now, I would consider that probably a harsh reaction. I would consider that probably an unhealthy decision. I would consider that probably not a decision you and I should be making whenever we see injustice around us. Now, did Moses think something should be done? Absolutely. Did he handle it the right way? No. That's not how we're supposed to handle it. We see injustice all the time, and some of us want to do something about it, but we shouldn't go to the extent of murdering somebody over it, right? So what happened? What was going on inside of Moses that in his injustice or his cure for injustice, he reacted in a very unhealthy way? Well, there was a primal question inside of Moses that was getting answered with a no or a maybe. And when that primal question gets answered with a no or a maybe in all of us, we tend to make decisions we wish we wouldn't make. And so Moses at that moment had to flee in order to save his life. He had to run in order to save his life. And if you know the rest of this story, at some point he goes out and he spends 40 years and he meets a girl and he gets included into this new family. Jethro was the father-in-law's name, and he gets married and now he starts a new life. And then at some point God gets a hold of him through a burning bush, and he says, "Moses, I need you to go back to where you came from, and I need you to tell Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go because they're being tortured, they're being mistreated. So I need you to be the one to say, 'Hey, you're mistreating the Hebrew people. Let them go.'" And so in this moment, Moses is like, "Wait, what? I left there for a reason. There's a reason why I ran away from there. That guy wants to kill me." And then he says this. He says, Exodus 3:11 says, "But Moses said, 'Who am I to go to the king and lead your people out of Egypt?'" So in this question, you can see that Moses is disclosing his primal question. He's disclosing who am I? Why would anyone listen to me? Why would anyone have any action towards something I would have to say? So he's asking, who am I? Why would anyone listen to me? What worth do I have? I'm a nobody. I don't have a position. I don't have a title. I don't have a land. I don't have a kingdom. I'm a nobody. Why would someone listen to me? And so in this moment, what you see happening is what we call primal avoidance. And primal avoidance is this: the subtle subconscious ways we try to prevent our primal question being answered with a no. It's a self-protection that stunts growth and opportunities. So what's happening right now is he's trying to protect his heart. He's trying to avoid being rejected. He's trying to avoid being hurt. He's trying to avoid being ridiculed by Pharaoh. So he's trying to convince God to say, God, please don't send me, because when I go to Pharaoh and I tell him to let your people go, he's going to laugh in my face. He's going to tell me I'm a nobody. He's going to tell me I have no worth. He's going to tell me I have no power, no wisdom, no education. And then he's just going to laugh at me, and then everybody around him is going to laugh at me, and that's not going to feel good. And I don't want to go through that. I'd rather not go through that experience. God, please don't send me. And so then God answers his primal question. And here's how he answers this primal question in Exodus chapter 3, verse 12. He says, God replied, I will be with you, and you will know that I am the one who sent you when you worship me on this mountain after you have led my people out of Egypt. So what God is doing right here, he's saying, hey, listen, Moses, you're not alone. You're not alone. I know you feel alone, but you're not alone. I know you feel like you don't have any worth, Moses, but you have worth. I know you feel like no one's going to listen to you, Moses, but I'm going to be with you. You're not alone. And that was Moses' deep need, was to feel that he wasn't alone. And God knew that. And so he said the words, I will be with you. And so sure enough, he brought Moses into a healthy place. And he finally was able to make this decision. And so because his primal question was answered with a yes, Moses became less impulsive and more intentional. Because his primal question was answered with a yes, he became less impulsive and more intentional. So he went from the, I'm going to murder for the injustice, to I'm going to hear God's voice, and I'm going to understand that I'm not alone, so I can be at a place of health and make decisions that I'm not going to regret. And that is where we want all of us to be at. We all want to be at a place where we can be knowing what our primal question need is, knowing that God is going to speak into it, and helping and asking God to help us to lead our life from a place of health so that we're not making decisions that we're going to regret. So before we go today, there should be one major question inside of your head. What's my primal question? What's your primal question? And how do you find out what your primal question is? Because up to this point, you're going to walk out these doors knowing Moses' primal question. You're going to walk out these doors knowing that when your primal question is not answered with a yes, you make unhealthy decisions and choices and behaviors that you wish you wouldn't make. So what is your primal question? And I'm so glad you asked the question, because we have a quiz. And that QR code right there is going to help you identify your primal question. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to take out your phones, and I want you to zoom in on that QR code. And you're going to see a primal questionnaire pop up on your phone. And once service is over, you can take 5 minutes and fill out the questionnaire that's going to help you identify what is your primal question. And here's what's going to happen for the next couple of months. Every week, we're going to go over the primal questions. And we're going to dig into God's voice and direction through how to speak into your primal question, and making sure you understand yours, and making sure you can lean into God's voice, and making sure you're leading your life through a place of health so that you're not making decisions or having behaviors that you later are going to regret. So as we get ready to close today, if you happen to miss this opportunity for downloading this, you can download our Church Center app, and on our South Hills Costa Mesa page, the very first thing that's going to pop up is a as a Primal Question questionnaire. So you can have your friends, you can have your family. When you leave today, they just got to log in to our South Hills webpage, our South Hills Costa Mesa, and the questionnaire will pop up, because this is what we're going to be doing for the next couple months, digging into your life and helping you connect with your Creator so that you can lead your life through a place of health, and so that God's voice can be the loudest voice in your life. So that God's voice can be the loudest voice in your life, leading and guiding your decision making, so that there would be no regret in the process of making decisions. Because I promise you this, when you make decisions that God is asking you to make, you're not going to regret those decisions. It is going to be hard at times, and it is going to be painful at times, but you won't regret the decisions that God is leading you to make. You will regret the decisions that you make on your own without God's guidance and direction. That I know. Let's bow our heads.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.